Hello and welcome. We are live once again, YouTube live streaming. I'm with Elliot Pfebve on the YouTube live stream tonight. It's 8:30 p.m. GMT. Would you like to say hello to the viewers?
Good evening, our distinguished viewers from all corners of the world, especially if you are on the ground in Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much, Elliot Pfebve. We are today discussing the High Court ruling against MDCT members who have been convicted of murder, something which happened 5 years ago. And I'm just going to ask you, Elliot, to give us a background to this case against the MDCT members, and also to say which members are particularly affected.
Yes, indeed. This is probably one of the longest trials in Zimbabwean history. It started 29 May 2011, to be specific. So the incident happened 29 May 2011 in Glenview. What I don't know what happened. The people who are being accused of murder don't even know what happened, and so is the state. So it's all assumed. Again, I'll actually make it clear why I'm saying so. In the sense that on the 29th of May 2011, it is alleged by the state that two police officers arrived at a bar in Glenview, which is in Harare, in a suburb of Harare. And the two officers, upon arriving in the bar, they were attacked by patrons of the bar. Now, one would then maybe ask a question to say, if the police officers were attacked by the patrons of the bar, how did they know that the patrons of the bar were MDC members? So it is alleged by the state that the patrons of the bar used chairs, stones. I have no idea where the stones could have been found in a bar. It is quite astonishing. To beat the police officers, resulting in Inspector Petros Mutedza being seriously injured, rushed into hospital, and died in hospital. The other police officer, according to the state, also received some injuries, but recovered from them. After 29th of May, which was now the 30th, the police was in full force in the area. They introduced more of a curfew or state of emergency within Glenview. And they started arresting members of MDC. The arrest continued for 8 months until eventually they arrested 29 members of the MDCT. And this case, I have to remind our viewers, is known as Mazore and others. The reason why the case is called Mazore and others is because Solomon Mazore, who was then the president of the Youth Assembly for MDC, was also arrested and was said to be the ringleader of the assault in the murder case. As we speak now, people might say, well, if he was the ringleader in the murder case, why is he not one of the four who were supposed to be sentenced today? Let me say that the other 23 members, including Solomon Madzore, were eventually acquitted. So we're left with with four of MDC members. So that's the background of that's according to the state. So I've put across the state's allegations. And okay, what is the case in terms of the MDC position? Those who are being accused. These people, mind you, they were not arrested on the scene. Neither they were arrested on the vicinity. And some of these were actually arrested, not necessarily in that suburb. And they had no knowledge of the incident. And they were not at the bar. And some of these don't even drink. So they would never have been at the bar at any given time. But their crime is that they were MDC members. So this is why it has taken so long. And I think some of the reasons we'll actually cover them as we go along in this.
Okay. I'm interested to know that you say the incident is said to have taken place in 2011.
Yes.
And at that time also the country was, there was a government of national unity in place. So what actually happened on the day? Why was the MDCT targeted? Again,
even though we had a government of national unity between 2009 and 2013, it was a marriage of inconvenience between MDC and ZANU-PF. And ZANU-PF, of course, were trying as much as possible to do a smear campaign against MDC so that the both regional, international community would regard MDC as a terrorist organization, not to be trusted. So yes, they have been always a campaign of smearing MDC. So in that regard, that should also be construed in that regard.
Okay, what about in terms of the relatives of the deceased? Are they the ones pursuing the case? Is it the state pursuing the case?
Surprising enough, you would have expected that the parents who are still alive, the brothers and sisters were pursuing this case against MDC members, and this is not the case at all. It is the state versus MDC. For your information, in 2012, the parents, firstly it was the brother, Petros Mutedza, who is Petros' brother, testified in the High Court before the same judge, and he said that he believed that the people who are being persecuted are innocent, and they voiced their concern on the day that the police delivered the body of Petros, because they discovered that Petros' private parts were missing. They also discovered that his tongue was missing. They also discovered that he had 2 holes at the back of his head. And they sought answers from the police. And the police had instructions not to answer. They didn't give them any answers. So the question from the parents and the relatives has always been, if indeed Inspector Petros Mutedza was killed by a stone, how come he's missing private parts? How come his tongue is missing? How come his 2 holes on the back of his head? And mind you, the judge, the same judge, Lemberebun, after hearing Tichaona's testimony or the evidence, decided to call the father, because according to the prosecutor said he wouldn't rely upon Tichaona Mutedza, the brother, because the brother was an MDC activist. They called in the father for evidence, and the father repeated the same evidence. So this is why you find that it is the state against the accused, and the parents are not part of it, because the parents have got actually a case with the state. And the current situation, and I have to also share with the viewers that Petros Mutedza comes from Mandarin, Bukumbura to be specific, and this is exactly where I came from. We went to school together, same primary school. So I know the family, I know the deceased very, very well. But the question has always been from the village, from the parents, from the relatives, they strongly believe that he was killed by ZANU-PF. He was killed by the CIO. Because a month before his death, he went back to his parents and shared his fear for his life, that he thinks he's being targeted. And there were names that were said of some CIO members, operatives who were stalking him. And I think I can also share one of the names. The name of the CIO so far who was identified was known as Victor Jarabaza. And the other one, Scott. I don't have the surname for Scott, but Victor and Scott were some of the names that were mentioned before the death of Petros. So there is a hidden hand in this matter. And the police know it very well. Chiuri should be part and parcel of the whole conspiracy, and so is the CIO. And the parents have always been saying this. This is not a new information that I'm giving you. Chinembiri Bunu has got this information. It was given to the High Court. So yes, this is why you are not seeing the parents at all. The parents have got actually a case with the state. So it's now the state against the accused.
Okay, interesting. So what happened then this week on Tuesday in court and today?
Yeah. What happened on Tuesday was the same judge with Chinembiri Bunu. Maybe the most important, I think what we need before we try to analyze what happened on Tuesday and also today, it is also important to give a brief history of the judge himself. The judge, Chinembiri Bunu, is a war veteran. Is one of those judges who were appointed after Mugabe purged the judiciary during the invasion in 2001. So that's when people like Chinembiri Bunu were also promoted to the High Court bench. So yes, and surprisingly, this judge has always been the judge presiding over political cases. And he should not have experienced of a personal vendetta against MDs. And it is not. This is the very judge who presided against Roy Bennett in 2012. This is the very judge who also presided on MDC petition in 2013, who threw the petition from MDC. And for your information, he is the very judge who declared that Morgan Tsvangirai must be arrested for pronouncing that he didn't have faith in the judiciary system. In his own words, Justice Bunu said Morgan Tsvangirai has soiled the integrity of the courts and therefore must be arrested. Well, unfortunately, the president, Morgan Tsvangirai, was not arrested, but this is the very judge who wanted our president to be arrested. This is the same judge who presided on the case of Basikiti, Mwenezi East, former ZANU-PF MP, who was fired by ZANU-PF, and then he took his case to the courts against suing Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF to be reinstated on his position. Is the same judge who threw the case that it has no merit, and he is the same judge who threw the MDC court case to force ZEC to provide us with the electorals, and he threw the case and said it has no merit. So if you look at Bunu, being a war veteran and very closely related to Robert Mugabe in both deeds and physical appearance, it is not surprising that he has been used as a tool of personal vendetta against the opposition. And for that as well, Justice Chinembi Bunu was rewarded last year, only last year in September, he was promoted to the Supreme Court. So he's now a judge of the Supreme Court. Now, in short, yes, on Tuesday, he found the 4 guilty, 3 of them guilty of murder, and then the driver of conspiracy to murder. And they were supposed to be sentenced today. Now, what happened today was very dramatic in the sense that it probably has not happened before, where a judge is supposed to, mind you, the trial is over. The trial was finished. Today was only sentencing. And he failed the sentence, the 4 of them, because our lawyer, or the lawyer representing the MDC team, Petros Mutedza, was grilling Justice Chinembi Bunu, in the sense that he failed to deliver those sentences. Instead, he saw the whole court was in quandary, to such an extent that the driver, who was said to be in conspiracy, was in conspiracy with the other 3, today has been given a bail. So he's out now on bail. And the 3 are going to be sentenced next week, which means that the court is actually going to review the evidence that has been given today by Petros Mutedza, which is dramatic in its sense, because today was supposed to be a sentencing day. So yes, this is where we are, and of course, he was being hammered. We saw him being reminded that it is not a crime to belong to MDC, and the fact that these were identified because they were wearing MDC regalia. It is not a crime to wear MDC regalia, just like what I'm doing today. And those were hammered over and over again to say that the lawyer actually said that it has got a political connotation. This is a personal vendetta on a single political party. It's based on conspiracy theory, which has not been proven. And the sentence cannot be allowed to go on. These people must be discharged. So yes, that's exactly what happened today, and we are waiting for what will happen next week.
Okay, so I mean, before Tuesday, the president, Robert Mugabe, he sort of made a comment. He made some comments pertaining to the way that the judges are handing out decisions. This was in response to the fact that the judges had revoked, I think, the banning of demonstrations. Do you think that that decision or those comments by the president might have influenced Justice Bono?
Indeed, given we know that, I mean, Mugabe has pronounced the same before, and each time he interferes with the judiciary, what follows later, we've seen that he would either force the judges to resign or fire the judges and replace them with his unappeared for apologies. We've seen that. And I can see dancing into that music of Robert Mugabe, because he was specifically appointed or promoted under the same guise of furthering the aspirations of ZANU-PF and Robert Mugabe. So I can see quite a lot of rulings that we have dance to Mugabe's pronunciation of fear. It actually amounted to intimidation of the judiciary in violation of our constitution, which actually pronounced the separation of powers between the executive and the judiciary.
Okay, so I mean, against the background of things that you've just said, I mean, anyone would see that it'll be quite difficult for justice to prevail in this situation. But do you think that such cases are exposing or are strengthening, our own democratic systems in terms of the way that the judiciary is performing? Because the very fact that we were not able to get a sentencing today, does that not speak, at least there's some kind of progress?
No. I think people must not look at this as a reprieve or as a comeback of the rule of law. There is a sinister motive. For your information, the government was aware. They were also aware of the youth, the support base of those convicted, and they were aware that today was going to be a very violent protest, maybe the most violent ever, if these people were sentenced today. And there's a reason why they had to move it. Was sort of water down the anger of the people and citizens of MDC. Was their thinking on how to curtail the support base next week. So it's not over until it's over.
Okay, I think this question was going to come a little later, but maybe I might as well ask it now because it's quite related to what you've just been saying. Do you think that because of this ruling, is this some kind of a message to the youth who have been demonstrating, the Tajamukas, this flag and all that? Is that a kind of warning to them to say, look what might happen to you?
Indeed, if you find dictators all over the world, they sort of flip the same pages. The first thing is that they put fear into the community, they put fear into the people. And another way of putting fear is once they arrest the perceived accused, then either they sentence them to harsh sentences of death penalties, and sometimes life imprisonment, as a sort of, not necessarily as a sort of a deterrent, because if we talk of a deterrent, you're talking of somebody who has committed a crime. But in terms of an intimidation and a warning to others. So yes, in that regard, you find ZANU-PF is playing the same tune of all dictators all over the world. And this is specifically to intimidate the civic organizations, hashtag Tajamuka, hashtag this flag, the political parties, all political parties who are coming together now in unison. They are under attack. Liberty is under attack. And this is what it is.
Okay, so what does it say about ZANU-PF and its influence over state institutions? Can you explain at least the difference between the state and the political party and how state institutions seem to have been overtaken by a single political party?
The problem in Zimbabwe is that we've got a well-defined constitution of 2018 in which there's a separation. Even the previous constitution, there was completely a separation of government, judiciary, and the political party. But since 1980, for the past 36 years, Mugabe is monopolizing all the institutions in such a way that the institutions have been ZANUized as partisan institutions, including the judiciary. And this is, I think, the challenge that we'll have in Zimbabwe for a very long time. For any party, a new political party that will win elections, free and fair elections in Zimbabwe, the first thing that we have to deal with is to make sure that they revolutionize the institutions. They decongest the institution. They actually make sure that they democratize the institutions, remove all those core heads that were put on partisan basis and put professional people. Other than that, we continue to have these serious problems in the country.
Okay, so what do you think is going to happen with the case next week? I mean, we do expect that a sentencing is going to be done next week. What do you foresee?
Justice delayed is justice denied, and ZANU-PF should know that. Whether they delayed because they saw that it was going to be a violent outcome, that does not necessarily mean that next week it will be less violent than it was supposed to be today. Because people are determined to seek justice. And what they are doing is not just, we know that. If it was just, then it was going to be supported by the parents. It was going to be supported by the relatives. So what we are saying is, next week, people of Zimbabwe should still convene in the High Court for the sentence. And they should vent their anger in the most pronounced manner as possible, in a language that ZANU-PF can understand, so that they can stop this persecution of innocent civilians. They must, look, nobody is condoning violence, and we are not. And we repeat, we want a very peaceful transition, and we don't want to go to state house by stepping on everybody's. But we need a just society. And Mugabe must deliver a just society. And we are taking audit of everything that is unjust. So yes, in that regard, what we are calling for is a just society. If people commit crimes, then they must face the music of the law, whether ZANU-PF, MDC, or any other political party for that matter. But this vindictiveness, whereby the state target only the opposition, whereby the state target MDC to send fear through the spine of the leadership, that must end, and we cannot accept it, and never will.
Okay, what is your advice to the judge, Justice Bono?
I probably have no kind words for Justice Bono. I know he's singing his master's song, but because already he had found them guilty before a comprehensive trial where they would defend themselves. And the fact that it has taken so long is because they don't have facts. And if you don't have facts to convict, then they must release them. So we are saying to Justice Bono, do unto these people what you would do to ZANU-PF, assuming that they fall in the same category where there is no evidence to convict. So yes, we are saying we know what Justice Bono is capable of doing. We know the cases that he's presided over, and most of them, they've actually been very partisan in their pronunciation. And we know that this is not going to be a different one. But we must be reminded that we are taking the audit, necessary audit. And he will have to answer. In a free Zimbabwe, he will have to answer. So yes, that's my warning to him.
Okay, thank you very much, Elliot. We've come to the end of our live broadcast. So maybe just one comment. It's interesting that the accused persons are actually, I mean, the person who is said to have been murdered, okay, happens to be an MDC member. So obviously, we can see that there is something fishy going on there. And would you like, Elliot, at this point to just tell the viewers how they can get in touch with you?
Yes, they can follow me on YouTube, Pfebve. They can also follow me on my blog, which is pfebve.blogspot.co.uk. I'm also on Twitter at Pfebve, and also heavily on Facebook, Elliot Pfebve.
Thank you very much. And I'm reachable on www.derektafuma.com. My hashtag is AskDerekTafuma. Thank you very much, viewers. We will see you in the next live podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.